Good morning. It's a happy video, isn't it? I just love that music and just the happy video. Good morning. My name is Noreen Kukkonen. Excuse me. And I'm your worship associate today. We may feel sad that Reverend Marie is leaving us soon. She's been our minister for 6 years, and as a quarter-time position, in her quarter-time position, she's given much more of that to us, and we're very grateful for that. She's been offering love and support and guidance for 6 long years, and we will surely miss her. But I think I speak for us all that we will have her in our heart forever. We thank her as well as others who make our services possible. Today, Don West Jr., our generous, highly skilled and artistic technician, is at the controls. Thank you, Don. And Carol Cole, our music director, who so kindly works with us to provide beautiful melodies, will uplift our spirits today on Sunday. Thank you to you both. Thank you, Rachel, also. You always help me so much, and I am very grateful for that. You're so generous in so many different ways. And thank you to everyone else. We're great people. We have a great congregation here. Let's keep it going. Today's gathering music was recorded by Jamaican singer Jimmy Cliff. It has some funny clips from a movie about Jamaica's efforts to compete in a winter sport. Talk about optimistic. The Jamaican bobsled team needed lots of hope as they trained to qualify for the 1988 Olympic Games in Calgary, Alberta. Coming from a small tropical island nation, their attempt at the challenging cold weather sport was met with guffaws all around. With little experience and borrowed equipment, they actually qualified. Unfortunately, in their final run, they lost control of their sled, they crashed, and they never officially finished. This would be enough to make some people hang up their mittens and go home, but these men stuck with it. They saw it as a challenge. It may have seemed like a devastating blow at the time, but the failure inspired the team to train even harder. Their efforts paid off, and they have qualified for every Winter Olympics since that time. They even stunned the world by besting the United States and Russia in the 1994 Winter Games in Lillehammer. So Jimmy Cliff's happy song, which includes pieces of the movie with John Candy, it's nice to see him again, but his happy song reminds us that sometimes there's a big dark cloud over our heads, but sometimes that cloud has a silver lining. To borrow from the Beatles, it goes to show you never can tell. This morning, we members of UUFLB see a small puffy cloud over Cypress Drive, maybe a little stratocumulus. Reverend Marie is leaving us, and we face other challenges to our community as well. As we contemplate these issues, our service will reflect our 5th principle, the right of conscience, and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. Everyone has a voice in choosing the forward path. Like the Jamaicans, we will find our strengths. Let's remember that we are part of a great community of faith. For our chalice lighting this morning, I've chosen an excerpt from a short work by UUA Minister of Arts, Erica Hewitt. If you have a candle at home, please light yours at this time. Let's see. There is not a match in my house. So we have a candle. We have a message from Reverend Hewitt called Bold and Courageous Together. These are important words for us today. You may wish to read out loud with me, even though you are muted. Bold and courageous together. With full hearts, we affirm our relationships with one another. We recognize our agency and our connected power, and we accept our responsibility to be bold and courageous. We light this chalice, symbol of all that we are, all that we have done together, and all that we will be, as our shared ministry encourages those within and beyond our walls. Thank you. Bold and courageous today. Our centering thought has its source from John O'Donohue. I'm thinking maybe Lee Marie used this last week, but if so, it's really a good one and bears repeating. You may choose to read this out loud. I think you'll be muted, but it's a beautiful thought. May I live this day compassionate of heart, clear in word, gracious in awareness, courageous in thought, generous in love. Thank you. Our opening hymn this morning is number 1058. It's called Be Ours a Religion. And thank you, Rachel. She very quickly got the words for us. You're wonderful. Carol will play for us.
Good morning, everyone. So we'll start with Ours a Religion. And I want you all to sing out really loud at home because I'm under the weather vocally. And so my voice is not going to be as strong as usual. So sing out for me. Here's your introduction.
Thank you, Carol. You sounded great. I know you have a frog, but we appreciate your always your best effort. Our next, the next slides will have our Unison Affirmation, which we feel in our hearts when we repeat it together. If there's cacophony, can't pronounce that, but if there's cacophony, it's beautiful cacophony. So please join in reading the Unison Affirmation together. May we be reminded
here of our highest aspiration and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not
isolated beings,
but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to
each other. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is its law. This is our great covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. As we come to our crossroads, Please remember that time, talent, and treasure are the underpinnings that support this covenant. At UUFLB, we support each other in our life's happenings. Sometimes it is with joy, sometimes sorrow. We have a slide that expresses that thought. Joy and sorrow are the light and shade of life. Without light and shade, no picture is clear. Thank you. This is an important part of our gathering. Sharing strengthens our bonds. We do this because each person in our fellowship has importance and value. Each person's experience matters, and we know we are just stronger together. If you wish, this is a good time to share your joy or sorrow with us so that knowing your experience together, we can provide comfort and celebration. We're still being recorded. Is there another hand? I bragged earlier about my husband's great nephew. He just got drafted by the Anaheim Ducks for their sixth draft pick, sixth round draft pick. But that's pretty exciting for a kid from a small town in Michigan. So it's exciting for the family, and he'll have Kukkonen on his jersey. So make sure it's spelled correctly. Anybody else? Okay, thank you all. Some good things and celebrations for Candy, and Teresa, you must be celebrating too with your son's recovery. And I don't know, Heather, I'm happy that you're here to join us today. You may put smiles on a lot of faces. And sorry if I'm forgetting someone, but it's always good to hear. Won't it be nice when we are together in the same room? I like the idea of those hugs, Heather. If you have a joy or sorrow that you're not able to share this morning for whatever reason, we're with you. May our loving thoughts bring you what you need today. Okay, now we have to think about the financial part of our service today. Think about how UUFLB has been important to your life, and why you need to support it. We give to remember that we're part of something bigger than ourselves. Our fellowship might be small, but if we gather our donations collectively, we can do even more good than we can do with individual gifts. Your offering is to sustain and grow the mission of the congregation and all its good work. So on your screen, please read, during these challenging times, and they are challenging, our UU Fellowship continues its mission while the bills keep coming in. Please give generously. We're dedicated to continuing our efforts to build a kind and just world. Payments can be made via PayPal, Tithely, or by US mail. This information is also available in the email sent to announce our service today. So you do have it in your email. Thank you. Please allow yourself to get comfortable for our meditation today. It comes from UCLA, where many wonderful things come from, but the website uclahealth.org provides meditations, and I believe mostly they're free. And this is a short meditation from them. And with it, I'd like just to introduce you to this possibility in your life.
So find a relaxed, comfortable position, seated on a chair or on the floor, on a cushion. Keep your back upright, but not too tight. Hands resting wherever they're comfortable. Tongue on the roof of your mouth or wherever it's comfortable. And you can notice your body from the inside. noticing the shape of your body, the weight, touch. And let yourself relax and become curious about your body. Seated here, the sensations of your body, the touch, the connection with the floor or the chair. Relax any areas of tightness or tension. Just breathe, soften. And now begin to tune.
You're muted, Noreen, sorry.
Live and learn. I'm of a vintage and a certain socioeconomic position that often failed to inspire teenage girls to reach for the stars. Thank God that's different today. But I did well in school, but I was more or less automatically directed to a teaching career. The first 2 years I spent teaching high school English to farm kids in Moravia, New York, the birthplace of Millard Fillmore. I thought before I met my students that I'd have a hard time with their accents. Well, this wasn't New York City, I came to realize, and it was their response to me that was the big surprise. "Where are you from?" they said. My California accent puzzled them. I was 3 years older than many of my 12th graders, and that did not work to my advantage. Sweet as they were, they pretty much chewed me up. I decided I would never, ever teach again. As we said in the 60s, it was a bad trip. Years went by with other jobs and new places to live, but I always volunteered in my kids' schools. One day it hit me that I really liked working with the immigrant students. I loved getting to know them, and it proved a catalyst for me to go back to school and retool for teaching English as a second language. My earlier unfortunate experience was actually quite useful in my understanding of effective classroom management. I became more like the teacher I had wanted to be when I first set out. My experience goes to show you just never can tell. Author and professor Heather Lanier, in her TED Talk this morning, speaks of her disabled daughter, whose handicap others consider to be a bad thing. Her conclusions may surprise you. She begins with a parable that some of you have heard already at UUFLB. Good, bad, can't say. Pertinent to us is her comment that we may feel overwhelmed today, but what if it is a gift? Today, with Lee Marie's departure and the other challenges we face, we feel the discomfort that Reverend Steffi referred to last week. Ahead of us is the blank canvas of unknowing she so eloquently described. We'll have to wait and see what the outcome of this crossroads is. But first, let's listen to Professor Lanier as she talks about good and bad.
There's an ancient parable about a farmer who lost his horse, and neighbors came over to say, "Oh, that's too bad." And the farmer said, "Good or bad? Hard to say." Days later, the horse returns and brings with it 7 wild horses, and neighbors come over to say, "Oh, that's so good." And the farmer just shrugs and says, "Good or bad? Hard to say." The next day, the farmer's son rides one of the wild horses, is thrown off, and breaks his leg. And the neighbors say, "Oh, that's terrible luck." And the farmer says, "Good or bad? Hard to say." Eventually, officers come knocking on people's doors looking for men to draft for an army. And they see the farmer's son and his leg, and they pass him by. And neighbors say, "Ooh, that's great luck." And the farmer says, "Good or bad? Hard to say." I first heard this story 20 years ago, and I have since applied it 100 times. Didn't get the job I wanted. Good or bad? Hard to say. Got the job I wanted. Good or bad? Hard to say. To me, the story is not about looking on the bright side or waiting to see how things turn out. It's about how eager we can be to label a situation, to put concrete around it by judging it. But reality is much more fluid, and good and bad are often incomplete stories that we tell ourselves. The parable has been my warning that by gripping tightly to the story of good or bad, I close down my ability to truly see a situation. I learn more when I proceed and loosen my grip and proceed openly with curiosity and wonder. But 7 years ago, when I was pregnant with my first child, I completely forgot this lesson. I believed I knew wholeheartedly what was good. When it came to having kids, I thought that good was some version of a super baby, some ultra-healthy human who possessed not a single flaw and would practically wear a cape flying into her superhero future. I took DHA pills to ensure that my baby had a super high-functioning, super smart brain, and I ate mostly organic food, and I trained for a medication-free labor, and I did many other things because I thought these things would help me make not just a good baby, but the best baby possible. When my daughter Fiona was born, she weighed 4 pounds, 12 ounces, or 2.15 kilograms. The pediatrician said there were only 2 possible explanations for her tiny size. Either, he said, it's bad seed or it's bad soil. And I wasn't so tired from labor to lose the thread of his logic. My newborn, according to the doctor, was a bad plant. Eventually, I learned that my daughter had an ultra-rare chromosomal condition called Wolff-Hirschhorn syndrome. She was missing a chunk of her 4th chromosome. And although my daughter was good, she was alive, and she had brand new baby skin and the most aware onyx eyes. I also learned that people with her syndrome have significant developmental delays and disabilities. Some never learn to walk or talk. I did not have the equanimity of the farmer. The situation looked unequivocally bad to me. But here's where the parable is so useful, because for weeks after her diagnosis, I felt gripped by despair, locked in the story that all of this was tragic. Reality, though, thankfully, is much more fluid, and it has much more to teach. As I started getting to know this mysterious person who was my kid, my fixed, tight story of tragedy loosened. It turned out my girl loved reggae, and she would smirk when my husband would bounce her tiny body up and down to the rhythm. Her onyx eyes eventually turned the most stunning Lake Tahoe blue, and she loved using them to gaze intently into other people's eyes. At 5 months old, she could not hold her head up like other babies, but she could hold this deep, intent eye contact. One friend said, "She's the most aware baby I've ever seen." But where I saw the gift of her calm, attentive presence. An occupational therapist who came over to our house to work with Fiona saw a child who was neurologically dull. This therapist was especially disappointed that Fiona wasn't rolling over yet. And so she told me we needed to wake her neurology up. One day, she leaned over my daughter's body, took her tiny shoulders, jostled her, and said, "Wake up, wake up." We had a few therapists visit our house that first year, and they usually focused on what they thought was bad about my kid. I was really happy when Fiona started using her right hand to bully a dangling stuffed sheep, but the therapist was fixated on my child's left hand. Fiona had a tendency not to use this hand very often, and she would cross the fingers on that hand. So the therapist said we should devise a splint, which would rob my kid of the ability to actually use those fingers, but it would at least force them into some position that looked normal. In that first year, I was starting to realize a few things. One, ancient parables aside, my kid had some bad therapists. Two, I had a choice, like a person offered to swallow a red pill or a blue pill. I could choose to see my daughter's differences as bad. I could strive toward the goal that her therapists called "you'd never know." They love to pat themselves on the back when they could say about a kid, "You'd never know he was delayed or autistic or different." I could believe that the good path was the path that erased as many differences as possible. Of course, this would have been a disastrous pursuit because at the cellular level, my daughter had rare blueprints. She wasn't designed to be like other people. She would lead a rare life. So I had another choice. I could drop my story that neurological differences and developmental delays and disabilities was bad, which means I could also drop my story that a more able-bodied life was better. I could release my cultural biases about what made a life good or bad and simply watch my daughter's life as it unfolded with openness and curiosity. One afternoon, she was lying on her back, and she arched her back on the carpet, stuck her tongue out of the side of her mouth, and managed to torque her body over onto her belly. Then she tipped over and rolled back onto her back, and once there, she managed to do it all over again, rolling and wiggling her 12-pound self under a coffee table. At first, I thought she'd gotten stuck there, but then I saw her reaching for something that her eye had been on all along, a black electric cord. She was a year old. Other babies her age were for sure pulling up to stand and toddling around, some of them. My kid's situation looked bad, a 1-year-old who could only roll. But screw that. My kid was enjoying the new limber freedom of mobility. I rejoiced. Then again, what I watched that afternoon was a baby yanking on an electric cord. So, good or bad, hard to say. I started seeing that when I released my grip about what made a life good or bad, I could watch my daughter's life unfold and see what it was. It was beautiful, it was complicated, joyful, hard. In other words, just another expression of the human experience. Eventually, my family and I moved to a new state in America, and we got lucky with a brand new batch of therapists. They didn't focus on all that was wrong with my kid. They didn't see her differences as problems to fix. They acknowledged her limitations, but they also saw her strengths, and they celebrated her for who she was. Their goal wasn't to make Fiona as normal as possible. Their goal was simply to help her be as independent as possible so that she could fulfill her potential, however that looked for her. But the culture at large does not take this open attitude about disabilities. We call congenital differences birth defects, as though human beings were objects on a factory line. We might offer pitying expressions when we learn that a colleague had a baby with Down syndrome. We hail a blockbuster film about a suicidal wheelchair user, despite the fact that actual wheelchair users tell us that stereotype is unfair and damaging. And sometimes our medical institutions decide what lives are not worth living, such as the case with Amelia Rivera, a girl with my daughter's same syndrome. In 2012, a famous American children's hospital initially denied Amelia the right to a life-saving kidney transplant because, according to their form, as it said, she was mentally retarded.
They follow a long
This is the way that
forgotten
the story
and
of
suppressed
disabilities
by the
as
fitness industry
bad
secret
manifests
that
in
was
a
used
culture.
for generations of
But there's a
bodybuilders and athletes before
surprisingly
steroids were even
insidious
invented.
counter
I
story.
get further and further
The story,
in. By the time
especially
I hit
that
the 90
people
days,
would
I had lost right at 30 pounds.
Oops. I don't know what that was. Well, I think that we've probably heard enough to get the point of Professor Lanier's presentation. You know, we put good and bad labels on things and we don't look deeply sometimes. And the point for us today is that we don't know what will happen as we proceed with UUFLB and the issues that we have today. But we're hoping everything will turn out better than we had thought. It's really hard to say. At this point, we would like to put ourselves, no, Don will put us into groups so that we can voice our opinions and feelings about the forward path for UUFLB. So when you begin your group discussion, please make sure that you have already chosen one person to record what your group says so that we can share that. Okay, Don, take it away.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of your question.
Here are report. Okay, now we can hear our reports. Who would like to go first?
Well, this is Brian. I spoke with Teresa and Annie and her husband. They had to leave the meeting. They have another appointment. But Teresa and I, we thought that a meet and greet would be a good start to opening the fellowship. We didn't really cover too many matters. We talked, Annie talked about the Reverend Lee Marie, but basically what we talked about is starting it up. And we agreed that a meet and greet would be a way to do it originally, open the fellowship for one day and we all get together physically. And from there we take off. And I was hoping that maybe Jonathan would serve coffee and get something going and start that way. Simple beginning, not complicated, just getting together.
That's a great idea.
We miss each other.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's it.
we have strength in that building too, which
Right.
is important.
Paul's there. Paul will help. Remember to get together. We just pick a day.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the task force to reopen the building is going to have a meeting, and I'm not sure yet, Paul, if we've been able to reach out to other people, but
Yeah.
we're throwing
Thursday,
it out
right?
to everybody, yeah, who wants to work on opening up the UUFLB. That it's going to be this coming Thursday at 3 p.m. And Paul's going to be there. I'm going to be there, and I'm not sure who else is going to be there, but everyone's welcome who would like to
Candy.
how to open the building. Oh, Candy, great. So anybody,
If-
welcome.
I think Rachel will be there if she's in town.
Okay, so it's this coming Thursday at 3 p.m. at our fellowship. So,
Can we put that out to the fellowship, to the congregation, that there's a meet and greet on Thursday?
well, it's not exactly a meet and greet, but it's fine with me. Rachel, you're the person who communicates these things to people. So why don't if everyone agrees it's a good idea, then I don't know. Well, here's my concern. If a lot of people show up, which is good, how are we going to handle all that? Because I don't know. Well, am I the only one that thinks that might be hard to have everyone show up? I don't know.
It might become too social because we haven't seen each other.
Well,
I
I'm worried
think
about that.
social is,
It's getting the work done. John, I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
No, I was going this meeting was planned for, it was a planning meeting for how to open the building, right?
That's exactly right.
I think it should stay that way, because I think we need to advertise a little bit more and plan for what would be a full-fledged meet and greet. Tapestry, when they opened, they had a protocol, and the protocol was things like everyone in the building had to be vaccinated. And even if you're vaccinated, you wear a mask in the building. No singing. They hum and don't sing. They have meet and greet outside of the building. And that's had worked very well. But they are also doing concurrent Zoom. So it would be nice if we could figure out, and Bruce and I are planning to do, we're presenting the service, I think, on August the 19th or something like that. It would be nice if we figured out how to make it possible for people to choose either one. If it was as simple as somebody up at the podium having the computer there so that they have Zoom running, and then Zoom could be, the Zoom camera is there while you're also talking to the congregation. I think that's sort of simple, but that might work. But I think it would be best if we allowed people to participate either way and not make it one way or the other only.
Thank you. So John, Mike, our president, is working on this right now. Mike.
Yeah.
Can you talk,
Okay.
Mike?
Yes, John, who's setting that up at Tapestry? What's the person's name?
Well, you know what? It's a very sophisticated tapestry. They bought equipment. They have about 3 people working on it. I don't think it's going to work technically. I'll send you the name, but it's,
yes, thank you. Thank you.
But you should ask them how we can do it without the technical stuff that they have. It's very sophisticated. I mean, I had in mind just setting a computer next to the person who's talking, and Zoom is running so that the camera will pick the person up. But anyway, so it's just, we're going to have to be flexible about it and try to figure out the best way to do it. But we can meet in the building if I would guess that all of us have been vaccinated. And if not, then I say try to participate through Zoom. But again, wear masks and keep the interaction down to, no hugging, no shaking hands, but we enjoy being together and seeing each other. And that's extremely important for a small congregation, my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Another group report.
Our group was Candy, Peggy, Oakley, Tina, and Carol, myself. And the conversation, Oakley pointed out that there's a lot of resources outside of the fellowship within the Southwestern District and the national organization. And the summary was that when we had our annual meeting, the information about Lee Marie hadn't been shared with us. And so there's an optimistic hope that had that information been placed on the table, there would have been a better understanding of the urgency and the situation that we find ourselves in now, and that there would have been a more aggressive effort from the fellowship to step up into the leadership roles that are needed. I mean, as everyone knows, our board is currently 3 people. We should have 7 according to our bylaws. And at the fellowship's annual meeting, no one was willing to step up and help fill those roles, not knowing that we weren't even going to have our quarter-time minister moving forward. So that is the best I can do in summarizing it. And it was really a focus on that we are in, no one is coming to save us. And if it's going to happen, it's going to happen with the people that are on this Zoom right now, and maybe a couple others that are missing, and that either we're going to fix it or we're not.
Okay.
I think that's that point. No one's going to come and save us is really important to listen to.
Yeah, I can go next. Our group was Noreen, Jonathan, and Bruce, and myself. And we talked about looking at our financial situation. Of course, questions are that, can we hire a new minister? How do we get members in to support whatever we're going to be doing? What are we going to offer a community? And why would a minister want to come to Laguna Beach? So those were some concerns. The other is that, some people haven't felt that we've been as cohesive as we could have been, because during the pandemic, we didn't get a lot of communications that draw us together, like what was the board doing? What was the leadership doing? And then also it was mentioned that other churches have opened up. They've been open for 2 months. And so there's that yearning to be back in the building. And so the time, talent, and treasure, those were really looked at as, people need to step up if we're going to continue. And so I don't know if Bruce, Noreen, or Jonathan, if you guys want to add anything.
I think you did a good job.
I think you summarized pretty much what we talked about.
Very good.
No conclusions, but a lot of questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Rachel. The next group. Let's see. Did we cover everyone?
So I talked earlier, but my group was Paul and John and Heather. And did I miss anybody? I think we just
Heather.
And okay. And yeah, Heather. And so basically what our group just had we spent a lot of time clarifying the situation that we were in. We didn't really come up with any solutions other than just talking about how one idea was, well, why don't we join Tapestry? And we talked a little bit about the history of the UUFLB partnership with Tapestry and how that wasn't as satisfying to people at our fellowship because their fellowship is very different in terms of how they do they're just more sophisticated, they're more people, and so it's a big church feel, and we were not getting that, when we were combining our two sister fellowships. So there was a lot of talk about that and how it would be nice if we could figure out a way to continue, but financially it's been a struggle for a while, and we don't know how it won't be a struggle, unless we actually sell our building, stay incorporated as a congregation, and then find another place to be, is what one thought is. But John, everyone who's in my groups, anyone to add anything on to what I said?
One thing I did want to say is that I'm not sure how many Zoom members that you have. I'm a Zoom member, and obviously I'm not going to be moving back to Laguna Beach right away.
Okay.
So I would hope that whatever you decide, if you decide to retain the UUFLB membership, you consider continuing with Zoom.
Very good.
I got it right too. Yeah.
You guys ready?
I'll try to be in the building Thursday before everybody else arrives, and I want to play around with the computer and the cameras and such, and switch back and forth between all the monitors, because I think what we're going to need to do is switch monitors between the local and the Zoom back and forth, so we have to be proficient at doing that. The camera can be set up with automatic positions, so we can go bang, 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 hit a button. It goes to whoever is giving the sermon. Immediately switch over to the chalice, and if we have a choir, boom, it'll zoom over. It will turn over to the choir people, and everybody on Zoom will be able to see wherever that camera is pointed.
Ross has his hand up.
Oh, thank you. We're back. We were in and we had to leave suddenly, so we're back. But I just wanted to share that, as many of you know, I'm a physician. And I just want to throw out a couple of things that I think are important. I'm also a member of the Divinaville Pines Board, and we're wrestling with exactly the same issues: how we open up safely, when, and all of that. I would personally recommend that anybody that comes person, not only we assume that they're fully vaccinated, but they need to be fully vaccinated. And that at this point, especially with the highly contagious Delta virus floating around our communities, is critical that anybody that comes in together needs to be fully vaccinated. And if they're not, then they need to be on Zoom. or separated from people. It's a matter of public health and personal safety in our older congregations. So I would just put that out for everybody. And masks are recommended. Whether they'll be required when all of this happens is not clear. Some of the county health departments are more active about that than others, but I would certainly recommend it in a communal setting. That being said, we now know that the virus is not so much shed by by contact, like shaking hands and stuff. It is shared. It is primarily transmitted by respiratory means and coughs and droplets. It is true that if you rub your own eye and or rub yourself and you don't wash your hands and touch somebody else's eye or mucous membrane, that can be a transmission, but it's rare. And I would have no problems with shaking hands with anybody or even a brief hug, making sure that we just touch each other's clothes and not portions of their body. But that's something we can work out. The other issue is, how we go forward. Our other hat is up here. We're in Victorville, and we had our little fledgling congregation, Unitarian Universalist Society of the High Desert, going here. And we did not have building nor any capacity to do Zoom services, no technology, nothing. So basically, COVID dealt our little congregation a temporary death knell. And we're sort of in the process of thinking and not really acting about how we're going to get together, because many of us have found a home here and in Ventura Church and other churches that are doing so, and found that remarkably satisfying, although we so miss being with each other. So there's really a dichotomous pull about what we ought to do, and where our treasure and our efforts ought to be. If we go back to trying to have our little congregation up here, we'll be forced, because of our time and our treasure, to pull back from Long Beach and from Ventura and the other congregations that our members have found. And it really poses a personal dilemma. We love you guys and we love each other, and we can't be both places at the same time. And it kind of is breaking my heart thinking about that. And again, like with the camp, even after all of this, we're still going to have ongoing, in my view, low-lying levels of highly transmissible viruses around, and may even get more transmissible if we get variant epsilon after variant delta. But we're going to have to be careful, I think, for the foreseeable future at this point. Even if everybody does get vaccinated, we're not sure if we don't need to get revaccinated or how long our immunity lasts. So, and we only assume that those of us that get vaccinated are truly protected, but we all know that if our body's immune system doesn't work as well, some of us, even though we're fully vaccinated, are not immune. And that's an extra level of precaution that we're not really taking into account. So these are all roadblocks, and I don't really know how to overcome them. And I'm just filled with sorrow for having to confront all of this, and thinking about, what could potentially be the death knell for some of our congregations. The Onion is having problems. Many churches are having problems. The new realities. I'm just going to.
I think I see Peggy with one last comment. Peggy?
I'll be brief. I wanted to follow up on what Ross is saying with just a couple of other mentions that got my attention this week with regard to COVID. And one is that it's looking like Pfizer people who had Pfizer vaccine are going to need they're kind of determining that those of us who had Pfizer are probably going to need a booster. And also, I think Los Angeles, someone can help me out with this. Los Angeles, I think, has just gone back to masks. So we're going to continue dealing with this along the way, even if we find some ways that most or all of us can feel comfortable being together. But I was in Dawn's group, and I wanted to just add something else that we talked about, and that's that all our options should be on the table. And that includes things like selling the building, but remaining a fellowship. I think Rachel might have mentioned that too, or Donna. You know, we don't have to dissolve as a fellowship, but we could raise money that way, or we could rent out the entire building, and we're so small, we could meet a lot of different places in the interim, or renting out the downstairs to start, which will keep some money going in. I'm interested in ideas that buy us some time while we try and regroup, get in the building, attract a few more people, but have some breathing space. We can't do anything in a panic or a rush. That takes more people. I've also, even during my years as president, I've always wanted to have more, I'll call them congregational meetings, but they wouldn't be like the annual meeting without all that business. They'd really be more like fireside chats or discussion groups where we meet more frequently to talk about these kinds of ideas about the fellowship. And this might be a really, really smart time to do it when there's so much on the line right now. Thanks, Noreen.
Thank you, Peggy, and everyone. Many things to think about, and will be any comments that you might have that haven't been heard this morning. You know, please get them perhaps to Donna or the task force meeting. Make your comments known, because it's us, you know, and we like us, and something has to happen. Okay, we have a closing hymn from Carol. She's very patiently waited. Thank you, Carol. One more step, number 168.
Once again, be sure to sing out. One more step. One more step. We will take one more step till there is peace for us, and everyone will take one more step. One more word. We will say one more word till every word is heard by everyone. Will take one more word. One more prayer. We will say one more prayer till every prayer is shared by everyone. We'll say one more prayer. One more song. We will sing one more song till every song is sung by everyone. We'll sing one more song.
Thank you, Carol. That was really beautiful. That's a nice song, and you sounded perfect.
Oh my, thank you.
We have come to the point where we extinguish our chalice. If you have one lit at home, please extinguish yours at this time. There's a slide to remind us of what our purpose is here. Let us be the light. Be the light. All right, let us sing peace on earth and good thoughts for the day.
Let there be peace on earth, and let
it begin with me.
it begin with me.
You're muted, Noreen. Sorry.
I've said we will proceed to our cafe unless you, of course, are talked out. It was wonderful to hear people able to express their opinions. I think this is lack of our ability to do that and the difficulties of communicating everything that goes on has been hard on people. So thank you all for stepping up to the plate today, and hopefully you'll be able to step up to the plate as we move forward with the task force. Anyway, let's have coffee.